G'day guys, welcome back to the Rugby League Guru podcast. We have got episode 2 of our best 17s for 2025. These are my best 17s, the sides that I would pick throughout. I will take you through what I think is the likely side, but you can find a predicted 17 on the internet. You can find 1,000 of them. I'm going to give you the 17 that I would pick for each side. We're going to head down to the nation's capital today. If you're watching on YouTube, guys, in the Roo Crew, they got this content about a week ago. The video and the audio, they got first dibs on it, as they always do in the Roo Crew. $2 a week, $8 a month, cheap as chips. Go and join a fantastic rugby league community in there with me. All right, let's have a look at the Canberra Raiders side. Fullback. KO Weeks, he obviously played a bit of halfback last year, jumped into the fullback position at the back end of the season. I do think it is his better spot. I actually thought the longer the season went, the better KO Weeks got. So for me, I would have him as my first choice fullback. Obviously, Chevy Stewart is down there in Canberra, and I love Chevy. I think he's got a huge future in our game, but I do think KO Weeks is probably the option at the moment still, but I think Chevy's going to be breathing down his neck, and once again, guys, competition for spots, it is always a positive thing. So KO Weeks for me, he would be my first choice fullback there. Let's move to the wingers. I thought Savage. I thought 2023, I was a little bit worried at the end of that season where his career was going to go, or where the early parts of his career was going to go. I think 2024, he had an unbelievable bounce back, and we were at the Ricky Stewart luncheon at the start of last season talking to a few Canberra Raiders officials and whatnot, and they would not shut up about Savage, and the term they kept using is turn the corner. And I think you could just see in his footy last year, he matured so much and really locked himself into that side. So Savage, I think he re-signed the other day. He will be on one wing. On the other wing, it's a little bit more open for me. Now, Albert Hopewada, he's been down there for a couple of years. I really like him. I think he's a very reliable footballer, does work out of his own end. Maybe not the tallest frame, but, you know, similar to Toto, he just ticks a lot of boxes for me. I think he's a good guy to have in your side. The other one I just wanted to keep an eye on is Tamale. He made his debut, I think, the last game of the regular season for the Dragons last year. I personally think he would have played more first grade of the Dragons had he not signed with the Raiders mid-year. I think he arrives in there. He's a guy that I really like the look of. As a Supercoach cheapie, I think he's one to watch, and I think he'll get an opportunity in this side at some point. And when he does, I think he's going to hit the ground running. I think he's a guy that's going to really impress throughout this year. It's just a matter of getting an opportunity. We have in the Roo Crew earlier in the year some stats that I put in there surrounding him, which you can go and find them. I'll see if I can find them just off the top of the dome here. So Tamale, this was my analysis of him. So from last year, he's played 36 games in New South Wales Cup and has scored 20 tries. Last year, Tamale played 24 games in New South Wales Cup. He scored 12 tries, had 23 line breaks, 4 try assists, and he averaged 180 metres per game, and he broke 199 tackles. That is a pretty good knock. He has played centre, wing, and fullback for the New South Wales Cup Dragons over the last few years. He's a talented guy that arrives down there that I think has got a big future. Those stats are pretty damn impressive. New South Wales Cup, I get it, but to have 23 line breaks, average 180 metres, and break 199 tackles in 24 games, that's a pretty impressive knock. So he's a kid to watch for me. He's one that I do think has a big future, and one that I think can break into this side. I reckon he's a sniff to land on the wing or in the centres. I think you'll definitely see him throughout the season. My centres, as it stands right now, Matty Timoko is an automatic. I think he's a strike centre in our game now. He will automatically be there. I think Tamale is a shot to maybe land in the centres, but I think it's going to be hard to leave out Seb Krish. He's been very consistent over the last few years for the Raiders. I think he is one of Ricky Stewart's favourites. Good defensively. I think last year, he had a hamstring injury at one point that kept him out for a little bit, but I think he played fullback a few times over the last few years, and for I think it was the 2023 season he played fullback. I think centre is his better spot, and he's a guy that I've always liked. So Timoko and Seb Chris for me in the centres. I think that Hopewada and Savage are most likely to land on the wings, but Tamale is my guy down there to keep an eye on. I reckon he could jump into one of those spots. Chevy Stewart as well, if they're looking to find a spot for him in this side, I think he could handle himself on the sting as well. So a few things to watch there, but that'll be my backline as it stands. The halves. Jamal Fogarty, he selects himself at 7. I think he's the best ball player in this side. He is the organiser in this side. Missed a large chunk of last year, which, similar to Tino for the Titans, I think it was a little bit of a blessing. The Raiders, they had to experience life without Jamal, and I think it made other guys step up. Getting him back in there at halfback with his kicking game, I think it's one of the best kicking games in the NRL. A fantastic guy to have in jersey 7. Ethan Strange would be my 5'8". A lot of rumours about him moving to the centres. I can understand it maybe a little bit later in his career, but I think right now with the squad the Raiders got and how they play, I think having a ball running 5'8" like Ethan Strange, I think it's the best way to go. So I'm going to keep Ethan at 5'8". Now, a lot of people want to move him to the centres so that they can find a spot for Sanders. From what I've seen of Sanders, I think he's more of a 7 than a 6. So I would rather have another ball runner at 5'8". So I'm going with Ethan Strange as it stands right now. Let's move to the forward pack. In the forward pack, I have got starting Josh Papali'i. He's obviously coming to the back end of his career. A lot of people might want to see him come off the bench now and whatnot, but honestly, the first 20 minutes, I'm happy to put my enforcer out there. I wouldn't leave him out there for too long. I would leave Tarpanay out there for a lot longer, but I think Papali'i, I think it's still good to start with him. Maybe occasionally bring him off the bench and whatnot, but I'd start with him. I'd also start with Joe Tarpanay. Now, I would have him in jersey 10. I would have him in the front row rotation, but I'd allow him to play 60, 70 minutes. I think he is very well conditioned. I think he's got the motor to handle those big minutes. And I kind of think the Raiders need him to play big minutes. I would love to see him free up that offload a little bit more. We've seen it at parts over the last 8 or 9 years when he's been in first grade. But he is the elite forward in this side and he needs to start. Tommy Starling, he would be my starting hooker. Rumours that he could be heading to the South Sydney Rabbitohs over the last few weeks. He apparently was snapped out the front of South Juniors the other day, meeting Wayne Bennett. We'll see how that all plays out. But Tom Starling, he would be my starting 9. Ricky Stewart has shit me for a long time with how he uses his hookers and the minutes they get and all this sort of stuff. I think Starling's the best 9 at the club today. But I think the guy that I'm going to pick in jersey 14, I think he'll be the best hooker at the Raiders for the next 8-9 years. So we'll talk about him in a minute. But Starling, round 1, in Vegas, he would be my hooker to kick off the season. Let's have a look at the back row. For me, these two guys pick themselves. They have a Kangaroo representative on the left edge, Hudson Young, one of the best players in the league. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's incredibly important for the Raiders. He's a bit like Dave Fafita up at the Titans, but I think just because he's not as big as Fafita and he doesn't break as many tackles and all that sort of shit, we probably underappreciate his importance. But I absolutely love him at the Raiders. I think he's a future leader of the club, and I hope they keep him there for the rest of his career. I love Huddy Young. He's a guy that I genuinely could see him breaking into like a best Raiders 17 of all time by the end of his career. Huge fan. Huddy picks himself on the left edge. Right edge is interesting. I'm having a look around a lot of social media content creators, a lot of Raiders people. A lot of people are putting Matty Nicholson on the right edge. And look, maybe he's a gun. I haven't seen a heap of him. What I've seen, he looks good to me. He looks like he'll be able to handle himself in first grade. But for me, I think if you're not picking Zach Hosking on the right edge, I think you're fucking kidding yourself. I genuinely think Hosking, if he starts to get game time, I think he can be one of the best edge back rowers in the game. I absolutely love Hosking. I think if you watch his games from last year until he got injured, he was killing it. Go and watch his first few games. Even when he came back later in the season, he was flying. What I love about Hosking, and when I was down at the Raiders during the year for one of their games, I met him on the sideline. And, there's a lot of guys you see in first grade who are sitting on the sideline and they're happy to sit in the stands and have a laugh with mates and watch the games and whatnot. Hosking was riding every single fucking moment of the game, and you could tell how filthy he was not to be out there and how keen he was to get back out there. He's got that hunger in him. He's got a point to prove. He hasn't really established himself as an out-and-out first grader in his career so far. He's sort of been a bench guy. Even this preseason, I can't believe how many people don't have him in the starting side. I'm tipping Hosking has a big season on the right edge for the Raiders. Jersey 13, Morgan Smithies. Not a superstar. If you're looking for try assists and try involvements, look somewhere else. But that's not how the Raiders play. I think just having a good defender through the middle, a guy that just takes his hit-ups. You've got other offloaders in the team like Tarpanay, Hosking, Young, these sort of guys. Smithies, he's an up-and-down footballer, but I'm okay with that. I think the Raiders have enough guys that chance their hand and whatnot. I'm okay having a plotter like Smithies in the side who will play 50, 60 minutes. He won't miss a tackle, and he'll just make his 8 metres each time he runs. Maybe it's always good to have upsiding guys, but I think they've got enough elsewhere. I'd be happy to start with Smithers in jersey 13. I know he's, probably like your black and gold sort of style footballer, but I'm okay with that. I think he'll do a job, and I think Ricky appreciates the role that he plays through the middle. Moving to the bench, and this is probably my big call. Jersey 14, I'm not even sure if he's allowed to play round one. I'm not sure if it's a development contract or what the go is. He's in their top 30 on their website. Owen Paddy. There was rumours the other day that Reece Robson was offered to the Raiders and they turned him down. We went on bloke and everyone sort of went, that's crazy. I said, nah, I get it. Owen Paddy, he's going to be one of my big CBAs for this season. I think he's going to absolutely explode down at the Raiders over the next few years, and hopefully they can keep him there. He's come down from Queensland over the last few seasons, played a little bit in New South Wales Cup last year. I've watched him play 3 games live and I've been blown away. He looks like one of the better hooker talents in the game to me over the next few years. So keep an eye on Owen Paddy. Whether they take him to Vegas or not, I'm not sure. The poor bastard won't even be able to buy himself a drink over there. He's too young. But I think he's got a big future, Owen Paddy. He'll be one of my CBAs I'll be talking about a lot over the next couple of weeks. He would be my 14. If he is not available, if he's not in their top 30, not of age to play, whatever it might be, I can understand starting with Danny Levi. You are going over to Las Vegas. It is going to be a big stage. It's going to be a tighter field. Defense is going to matter. Maybe you just take him for the experience. Maybe you debut him back in Australia. I'm not too sure, but it is a pretty big stage. Round one, new combos and everything, I'd be okay if they started with Danny Levi. But in my best 17, Owen Paddy's getting into my side. And I think this time next year, we will be talking about him as the starting hooker for the Canberra Raiders. I think he's going to solve a lot of issues for them heading into the future. Jersey 15. Big Red, Corey Horsburgh. A lot of people will want to start him in the side, and I get that 100%. I just think in that first 20 minutes, I want Josh Papali'i out there. I want him to sort of go through that first tough 20 minutes, get through that, and then I'm going to bring Horsburgh on, and honestly, I might not take Horsburgh off. I'd be okay to see him play the back 60, plays the last 20 minutes of the first half, has a break at halftime, and then I think he can go the distance in the second half. And I think when you take Papali'i off, normally you take off a front rower, there's a bit of a drop. I think Horsburgh can just lift up, and I think he's a guy that can go with Joe Tarpanay. So Horsburgh coming off the bench. I know we have this old school process in rugby league where your shit players are on the bench, your best players start. It's a thing of the past. You need to move the fuck on from it. You need to be able to balance out your team throughout the 80 minutes. Horsburgh off the bench is gold for me. Jersey 16 and 17. I've got about 15 fucking names here we're going to put into a lottery and see what we come up with. I think Emre Gula has to be one of them. I've been really impressed with him over the last few years. He's consistent. He's safe. He does a job. I tend to lean towards the other jersey being Ata Mariota as well. I really like him. I think he's been really good over the last few years. I spoke very highly of Trey Mooney 2 years ago. And I remember people that are Raiders fans said to me at the time, Trey Mooney, Mariota, I'm not too sure. And I thought, fuck, Trey Mooney's much better. Mariota's the one that's really jumped out of the ground over the last few years. So for me, Mariota and Gula probably get those spots. But then there is Pasami Saulo, who's been fantastic. I've been very, very impressed with him. He's a slightly different body shape, big bit of gear who fits well. You've obviously got Trey Mooney as well, who I think at any moment could absolutely explode. I think he's earned a lot of respect off Ricky Stewart. I know for a fact, he had a lot of opportunities to go and join a club in Sydney. I'd join a few clubs in Sydney to probably get a start in their 17. Instead, he chose to re-sign at the Canberra Raiders. So he chose to go up against Tarpanay, Horsburgh, Papali'i, Gula, Mariota, these sort of guys. There was an easier route, probably more money. He chose to stay under Ricky Stewart and earn an opportunity, which I like. The other one is the wild card, Matty Nicholson, coming over from the English Super League. I've heard that he is a very good player. I've seen him play a couple of times. Probably not enough to make a big judgment on. He'll be a big watch for me in trials. I would imagine if they're going to drag him all the way over from the Super League, they probably find a spot for him. Where that is, I'm not too sure. If they do find a spot for him, I hope it's not on the right edge. I'll be happy to admit it if I'm wrong, but I would be very surprised if he's a better player than Zach Hosking. So we'll see where it all lands, guys. But that's my team as it stands right now. That bench is still a little bit of a lottery. Gun to head off the information I have right now, I would probably go Mariota and Gula. The next closest would probably be Saulo for me. But we'll wait and see what Matty Nicholson is like. That is my Raiders 1 to 17 that I would pick for season 2025. The guys that sort of missed the side, you've obviously got Saulo. We mentioned him, Trey Mooney, Nicholson potentially. Tamale, whether he gets into the side or not, we'll have to wait and see. Chevy Stewart, we spoke about him. I still think he's got a huge future in our game. Just has to wait for the right moment. A kid I want you to keep an eye on is Miles Martin. He has come down to the nation's capital from Newcastle. He was at Parramatta a couple of years ago. I watched him play SG ball and whatnot. He then made the move to Newcastle. I watched him play the junior grades with Fletcher Sharp and them. And honestly, When he was in SG Ball, there was two absolute standouts on that field. One was Fletcher Sharp. He looked exactly like Ryan Pappenhausen. The other one was Miles Martin. He looked exactly like Isaiah Yeo to me, the way that he was playing. In Newcastle, I'm not sure what's happened there. I just don't think he quite found his feet. From what I've gathered and what people have told me up in Newcastle, Miles Martin, he's a real country boy. He loves getting out on the farm on the weekend, all that sort of stuff. And I think going down to Canberra, I think it'll be a great move for him because I know they're the sort of guys the Raiders want to build around. Country guys, they've got a lot of them down there. And I think Miles Martin, I think he could get really comfortable there and could potentially get back to his best footy. So one to keep an eye on there, Miles Martin. He's a lock forward, one to watch out for. You've obviously got Sanders arriving from the Parramatta Eels. I really like him. From what I've seen, I think he's more of a halfback than a 5'8". I still think being in Canberra will be good for his development under Ricky Stewart, but I probably don't have him in my round one starting side. I would rather have Ethan Strange at 6, but I think there's every chance he does start at 5'8". The other one is Adam Cook, who came in and played well last year. One of the favourites down there in the nation's capital, done very well in reserve grade over the last few seasons. I just can't find a spot for him at the moment. I think you have to run with two hookers. I think Fogarty has to be your 7. I think Weeks has to be the 5'8". Has to be the fullback. And I think Strange is the best 6 there. So I just can't find a spot for Adam Cook. But I think if they get 1 or 2 injuries deep in their spine, he could very quickly not only become important, but I'm actually confident he could play a role for them as well. So when you have a look at that Raiders side, and you look at the depth at it, they might not have the absolute standout superstars that other teams do, but fuck, their depth is good. They're going to need a pretty bad injury run for this to get really ugly for them. So I think it is a positive for the Raiders. They got all these young guys who I think have got big futures in front of them, which is super exciting. Obviously, this year they've lost a lot of experience. Elliot Whitehead, Jordan Rapana leaving. Very, very tough. That's going to be a very hard hole to fill. It's going to be tough, but I think these young guys coming through and still enough experience there. I think Timoko's at an age now where he's ready to be a strike centre in the NRL. Seb Koresh has been around for a few years. Fogarty, he might not ever play rep football, but he's a guy that I think on any given week he can get the better of any halfback in this competition. Probably not named Nathan Cleary. So I really like Fogarty. He'll never get the applause he should, but I think he's a perfect 7 for them down at the Raiders. And the forward pack is unreal. Papali'i, Tarpanay, Young, Hosking. I absolutely love these guys. As I said, Hudson Young, so important to this side. I think he's in for a big season. And Zach Hosking, though, he's the one that I want you to keep an eye on this season. I reckon he goes big for the Raiders on the right edge. And Owen Paddy, whether he's there round 1, round 2, round 22, I don't know when the fuck it'll be, but when he arrives, you will know about him. One of my favourite CBAs for season 2025, Owen Paddy, one to watch down there in Canberra.